The golden light of the San Francisco sunset spilled across Dorian Vance's penthouse office, casting long shadows over the cold steel and glass that mirrored the fracture in his life. At 38, he had built a tech empire from nothing, a kingdom of innovation and power. Yet here he sat, staring at the divorce papers that threatened to unravel everything. The signature of Maricela Drake, once his wife and partner, now felt like a dagger twisting deep into his heart and his company's future. Behind the sleek mahogany desk lay more than just legal documents. Hidden were secrets of betrayal, whispered deals, and a rival CEO's calculated plan to take it all away. The board was waiting, demanding answers, and the clock was ticking. Dorian's empire needed stability, an heir, and a shield against the storm. But when a desperate call brings Leora Quinn, a brilliant, struggling financial analyst with her own battles, into his world, Dorian faces a choice: risk everything on a contract marriage with a stranger, or watch his legacy crumble. In a city where power is everything, can a marriage built on business become the greatest gamble of all? Before we dive into this story, drop a comment telling us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. We always appreciate hearing from our community. At 38, Dorian was the embodiment of success. A self-made tech billionaire, he had built Vance Innovations from a modest startup into a global powerhouse, revolutionizing artificial intelligence and cloud computing. His name was synonymous with brilliance and unyielding ambition. Yet, in this moment, all that power felt fragile, slipping through his fingers like sand. His steel-gray eyes, usually sharp and commanding, were shadowed with exhaustion and disbelief. The signature on the papers was elegant, almost mocking. Maricela's graceful script sealing the end of their marriage and threatening the future of everything he had fought for. A soft chime from the intercom broke the silence. Felix Marlowe, his trusted legal head and closest confidant, spoke with measured urgency. "Mr. Vance, the board is assembled in Conference Room A. They're expecting you." Dorian's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes, he replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. He pressed his fingers against the edge of the desk, grounding himself. The board meeting was not just about the divorce, it was about the survival of Vance Innovations. The company's bylaws, written by his late father, were clear and unyielding. The CEO must be married and have an heir to maintain control. Without fulfilling these conditions, the board could challenge his leadership and, worse, open the door for hostile takeover attempts. And there was one man waiting in the wings, eager to seize that opportunity: Camden Royce. Camden Royce was the CEO of Royce Technologies, Vance Innovations' fiercest rival. Where Dorian was calculated and reserved, Camden was ruthless and flamboyant, known for aggressive acquisitions and cutthroat tactics. Rumors had long swirled about Camden's attempts to infiltrate Dorian's company, but the latest revelation cut deeper than any corporate espionage. Maricela, Dorian's wife, had been playing a dangerous game. The photographs Felix had discreetly delivered earlier that day told a story of betrayal. Secret meetings in exclusive San Francisco clubs, whispered conversations in luxury hotel suites, and most damning of all, a ring, a symbol of a new alliance exchanged between Maricela and Camden, all while still wearing her wedding band. Dorian's mind raced as he recalled the last few weeks. The morning he discovered the truth had started like any other. A video call with Maricela, who was supposedly in New York for a charity gala. She had smiled, radiant and confident, speaking of future plans and philanthropic ventures. But beneath that smile was a web of deceit that threatened to unravel his life. He poured himself a glass of aged bourbon, the amber liquid burning as it slid down his throat. His father's words echoed in his mind. Never let them see you bleed, Dorian. Power is as much about perception as it is about reality. But how could he maintain the illusion of control when everything he had built was under siege? The city lights flickered on as dusk settled, casting long shadows across the room. Dorian's gaze drifted to a framed photograph on his desk. A rare moment of happiness captured years ago. Him and Maricela at a vineyard, their smiles unguarded and full of promise. That man felt like a stranger now. Felix returned, placing a folder on the desk. The final settlement documents are ready for your review. Maricela has agreed to all terms, including a non-disclosure agreement and waiving any claim to company shares or property. Dorian nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The board's real concern was succession. Without an heir, his position was vulnerable. The bylaws were a relic of a more traditional era, but they held power that Camden Royce was poised to exploit. Felix hesitated before adding, "There's been talk among the board about alternative arrangements. Contract marriages aren't unheard of in these circles." Dorian's eyes narrowed. The idea should have repulsed him. A cold, transactional union devoid of trust or love. Yet, in the quiet desperation of the moment, it held a strange appeal. A marriage of convenience, a shield against betrayal, a strategic move to protect his empire. He leaned back, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Could he trust someone new? Could he risk opening his life to another person, even if only on paper? His phone buzzed with a message from his sister, Celine, an environmental activist and his fiercest supporter. "Big brother, you need to rest. This isn't just about business, it's about you." Dorian's lips curled into a bitter smile. Rest was a luxury he could no longer afford. The board meeting loomed, and with it, the future of Vance Innovations. But before he could face the room full of skeptical eyes, he had to make a choice. One that would change everything. A contract marriage. A calculated gamble. And somewhere in the city, a young woman named Leora Quinn was about to receive a call that would alter the course of both their lives forever. The soft hum of fluorescent lights filled the quiet office of Quinn and Partners, a boutique venture capital firm tucked away in a modest building near San Francisco's financial district. At 8:15 p.m., most of the staff had long since left, but Leora Quinn remained, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she pored over spreadsheets and financial models. The glow of her dual monitors illuminated her focused green eyes, framed by the subtle gold flecks in her designer glasses, a rare indulgence she allowed herself after her first bonus. Leora was brilliant, no doubt about it. At 27, she was the youngest financial analyst in the firm's history, known for her sharp mind and relentless work ethic. But brilliance alone didn't pay the mounting medical bills for her mother's rare autoimmune disease. Every late night, every skipped meal, every extra hour spent crunching numbers was a step toward keeping her mother alive. A notification popped up on her screen. Hospital payment due, $12,000. Her shoulders tensed involuntarily. 3 more years of experimental treatments and insurance covered barely half. The weight of it pressed down on her like a physical force. "Almost done with the Morrison Group analysis," she murmured to herself, pushing her glasses up her nose. The hostile takeover rumors swirling around Vance Innovations had caught her attention weeks ago. The stock movements, the subtle shifts in shareholder behavior, all signs of a brewing storm in the tech world. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Normally, she'd let it go to voicemail. but something made her answer. "Miss Quinn?" The voice was crisp, professional, and unfamiliar. "This is Felix Marlowe from Vance Innovations. I apologize for calling so late, but we have an urgent matter to discuss. Would you be available for a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? Leora blinked, heart skipping. Vance Innovations? The name alone carried weight in the industry. "May I ask what this is regarding?" she managed, keeping her voice steady despite the sudden rush of adrenaline. "I'm afraid I can only discuss the details in person," Felix replied smoothly. "However, I assure you it's a legitimate business proposition that could be life-changing." Her mind raced. Life-changing? The phrase echoed in her head, mingling hope and skepticism. "I'll need to check with my supervisor," she said cautiously. "That's been arranged," Felix interrupted. "A car will pick you up at 8:30 a.m. sharp." After ending the call, Leora sat back, her thoughts swirling. What could Vance Innovations want with her? She was just a junior analyst, barely making a name for herself. Yet the promise of a life-changing opportunity was too compelling to ignore. The next morning, Leora found herself in the back seat of a sleek black Mercedes, the cityscape unfolding outside the tinted windows. The transition from her modest apartment to the gleaming towers of the financial district felt surreal. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Security at Vance Innovations was tight, but she was cleared with surprising efficiency. The private elevator whisked her directly to the executive floor, where Felix Marlowe awaited, his demeanor as precise and controlled as the company he represented. "Miss Quinn, thank you for coming," Felix greeted, leading her through a corridor lined with abstract art and glass walls. "Please, follow me." They entered a spacious conference room bathed in natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. At the head of the table stood Dorian Vance, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit that emphasized his athletic build. His steel-gray eyes, intense and focused, locked onto hers with an unreadable expression. "Miss Quinn?" Dorian's voice was deep, carrying a hint of roughness that suggested sleepless nights and heavy burdens. "Please, have a seat." Leora took the offered chair, acutely aware of the weight of his presence. This was no ordinary meeting. Dorian wasted no time. "Your analysis of the Morrison Group's financial strategies, particularly your notes on their pattern of hostile takeovers through personal leverage, is impressive work." Leora's mind raced. That analysis was still in progress, not yet submitted to her supervisors. How did he know? "We have our ways," Dorian said with a faint smile. "More importantly, it demonstrates exactly the kind of insight we need." Felix slid a thick folder across the table. "We're offering you a business proposition. A contract marriage with Mr. Vance for a minimum of 2 years, with very specific terms and considerable compensation." Leora's hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder. The first page detailed financial figures that made her breath catch, enough to cover her mother's treatment 10 times over, plus a substantial trust fund for future care. "Why me?" she asked, pride and disbelief mingling in her voice. Dorian's gaze softened, revealing a flicker of vulnerability beneath his polished exterior. "Because you're brilliant, but unknown. Your background check shows a history of absolute discretion and loyalty. And because you have a pressing need that we can help with, while you help us maintain stability during a crucial period." Her mother's pale, brave face flashed in her mind. The countless hours spent researching treatments, the hope and pain intertwined in every phone call. Leora forced herself to think analytically, treating this like any other business proposition. What exactly would be required of me? Public appearances as my wife, Dorian replied, residence in my penthouse, participation in social events relevant to the company, and, of course, an heir within the 2-year period. Leora's cheeks flushed at the unspoken implication. The contract includes strict confidentiality clauses and significant penalties for any breach, particularly regarding business intelligence and personal matters, Felix added. How long do I have to decide? She asked, already calculating probabilities and consequences. Until 5 p.m. today, Dorian said, standing. I have a board meeting at 6 p.m., where I need to present either a signed contract or a different solution. He moved to leave, then paused beside her chair. Miss Quinn, I know this is overwhelming, but sometimes the most life-changing opportunities come disguised as impossible choices. After he left, Leora sat alone in the conference room, staring at the contract before her. The sun had fully risen, bathing the city in morning light. Somewhere in that sprawl was her mother's hospital, where monthly bills arrived with the regularity of terminal illness. Somewhere was her tiny apartment, with its second-hand furniture and careful budgets. And here, in this room high above it all, was a chance to change everything, at the cost of 2 years of her life and her heart's independence. Her fingers hovered over the pen, trembling. Then, with a deep breath, she signed. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the polished marble floors of the executive suite. Leora stepped out, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. She adjusted the lapels of her charcoal gray blazer, the most expensive piece in her wardrobe, and smoothed her skirt as she approached the imposing double doors of Dorian Vance's office. Inside, the room was a study in modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the San Francisco skyline, sleek leather furniture, and minimalist art that spoke of refined taste and power. At the center, behind a massive mahogany desk, stood Dorian, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. He turned as she entered, his steel-gray eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The tension between them was palpable, a charged mix of professionalism, curiosity, and something unspoken. Miss Quinn? Dorian greeted, his voice low and steady. Please, have a seat. She took the chair opposite him, her fingers resting lightly on the polished surface. Thank you, Mr. Vance. He gestured to the folder on the desk. Let's discuss the terms. Leora opened the folder, scanning the pages with practiced eyes. The contract was exhaustive, covering every conceivable detail of their arrangement. Confidentiality clauses bound her to silence about the marriage and company affairs. Infidelity would trigger severe penalties, forfeiture of assets, and a $50 million fine. Social media activity was strictly regulated. Every post required approval from the company's PR department. And then, the heir requirement. Within 2 years, they were expected to produce an heir to secure Dorian's position and satisfy the board's bylaws. Leora's mind catalogued each clause, weighing the implications. These terms are stringent, she said carefully, but understandable given the stakes. Dorian nodded. This isn't just about appearances. The board needs reassurance, stability, an heir. She looked up, meeting his gaze. I want to be clear. I'm not interested in being a figurehead. If I'm to be your wife, even contractually, I want to contribute meaningfully. He raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Access to company financials, she said firmly. Not just surface-level reports, but deep analysis permissions. I want to help protect the company from threats like Camden Royce. If I'm to be part of this, I need to understand the battlefield. Dorian studied her, a flicker of respect crossing his features. "That's a bold request." "Necessary," she replied. "You need someone who can spot patterns others might miss, someone whose loyalty is guaranteed by both contract and personal interest." Felix Marlowe, who had been quietly observing, cleared his throat. "We can draft an addendum granting you direct access, with weekly briefings." To Mr. Vance, Dorian nodded slowly. "Agreed. But understand this. Your loyalty will belong to me and the company completely. There's no middle ground." Leora's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "I understand." They spent the next hour meticulously reviewing every clause, negotiating language, and clarifying expectations. Dorian's initial reserve softened as he recognized her intellect and determination. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of hope. Finally, the contract was ready. Dorian slid the pen across the desk. "Shall we?" Leora took a deep breath and signed, the weight of the moment settling over her like a mantle. No sooner had the ink dried than Felix's phone buzzed. "The media team is ready," he said. "The announcement will go live in 10 minutes. Dorian's expression hardened. "Make it clear, this is a strategic alliance, not a fairy tale." Leora nodded, though a small part of her wondered if even she believed that anymore. The press release hit the wires. Vance Innovations CEO, Dorian Vance, announces surprise marriage to financial analyst Leora Quinn. The union is a strategic move to ensure company stability and succession. Social media exploded with speculation, praise, and skepticism. That evening, the wedding was a quiet affair. A private ceremony in the penthouse, witnessed only by Felix and a few legal representatives. The room was filled with the soft glow of candles and the faint scent of white lilies, chosen by the PR team for their symbolism of purity and new beginnings. Leora wore a simple, elegant gown, sophisticated but modest, carefully selected to balance grace with professionalism. Dorian's tailored suit was impeccable, but his usual stoic mask was tinged with something softer, almost vulnerable. As they exchanged vows, the words felt hollow, yet heavy with unspoken meaning. This was not a union of hearts, but a contract forged in necessity and survival. Their hands brushed briefly, sending an unexpected shiver through Leora. Dorian's eyes met hers, a flicker of something real passing between them before he quickly masked it with a nod. The ceremony ended swiftly, the couple stepping into roles they had neither chosen nor desired, but could not escape. As the city lights twinkled below, Leora and Dorian stood side by side, strangers bound by contract, their futures intertwined in ways neither fully understood. The days following the wedding blurred into a whirlwind of flashing cameras, whispered rumors, and carefully orchestrated appearances. Leora found herself thrust into a world she had only observed from afar. Gala dinners in glittering ballrooms, boardroom meetings where every word was weighed, and social events where smiles masked unspoken agendas. At first, the glare of the public eye was overwhelming. Reporters speculated endlessly about the contract bride and the Ice King CEO, who had finally softened. Social media buzzed with theories, some admiring, others cynical. Leora learned quickly that in this world, perception was everything. Yet beneath the polished veneer, she remained grounded. Her nights were still spent poring over financial reports, her days juggling company events with calls to her mother's doctors. The contract marriage was a shield, yes, but it was also a responsibility she took seriously. Dorian, for his part, maintained his usual stoic exterior. The nickname Ice King was well earned. His presence commanded respect, his decisions swift and unyielding. But Leora began to notice cracks in the armor. Small moments when his guard slipped, a lingering glance, a rare smile when she challenged him on a financial projection, or the way he listened intently when she spoke about her mother's health. One evening, after a particularly grueling shareholders' meeting, they found themselves alone in the penthouse. The city lights stretched endlessly below, a glittering sea of possibility and peril. Dorian poured 2 glasses of aged scotch, handing one to Leora. "You're handling this better than I expected," he admitted, his voice softer than usual. She smiled faintly. "I have to. For my mother. For myself." He nodded, swirling the amber liquid thoughtfully. "I wasn't sure what to expect when you agreed to this. But you're not just a figurehead. You're real." The word hung between them, fragile and unexpected. Leora met his gaze, her own eyes reflecting the weight of unspoken stories. "I've had to be real for a long time. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing." Dorian's expression softened further, a rare vulnerability surfacing. "I lost my father last year. He built this company with his hands and heart. I'm trying to live up to that legacy, but sometimes it feels like I'm drowning in expectations." She reached out, her hand brushing his. "You're not alone." Before the moment could deepen, the door opened, and Celine Vance stepped in. Dorian's younger sister was a force of nature, fiery, passionate, and fiercely protective. An environmental activist known for her outspoken views, Celine had always been a thorn in the side of corporate conservatism. Yet she had embraced Leora from the start. "Sorry to interrupt," Celine said, her eyes sparkling with warmth as she looked at Leora. "I just wanted to check in. How are you holding up?" Leora smiled gratefully. "Better now." Celine's gaze shifted to Dorian. "You're lucky to have her. Don't forget that." Dorian's lips twitched in a rare smile. "I'm beginning to realize that." But beneath the growing warmth between them, the storm was gathering. Camden Royce was not one to be deterred. His hostile takeover attempts had escalated, with Royce Technologies launching aggressive campaigns to destabilize Vance Innovations. Share prices fluctuated wildly, and whispers of insider leaks and sabotage circulated in the financial press. One late night, as Leora reviewed company accounts in her new office adjacent to Dorian's, a pattern caught her eye. A series of suspicious transactions routed through shell companies linked to Royce Technologies. The timing was too precise, the amounts too calculated. Her heart raced as she dug deeper, uncovering a web of financial maneuvers designed to weaken Vance Innovations from within. She knew this was more than business. It was a war. The phone on her desk buzzed with a message from Felix Marlowe. "We need to talk. Urgent." Leora's fingers trembled as she typed back. "I've found something. Meet me in your office." As she stood, the weight of the discovery settled over her. The contract marriage had brought her into Dorian's world, but now she was beginning to understand the true cost of the empire she had agreed to protect. And the enemy was closer than they thought. The glow of Leora's computer screens cast long shadows across the dimly lit office as she delved deeper into the labyrinth of Vance Innovations' financial records. The numbers, once mere data points, now told a story of betrayal, manipulation, and a covert plan to dismantle everything Dorian Vance had built. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, tracing transactions that led to shell companies, offshore accounts, and suspicious contracts. The names that surfaced chilled her: Camden Royce, the rival CEO, and Maricela Drake, Dorian's ex-wife. The very woman whose betrayal had shattered Dorian's personal life was now weaponized against his empire. Leora's mind raced as she pieced together the puzzle. Maricella's sudden alliance with Camden was no coincidence. Their plan was insidious: to destabilize Vance Innovations from within, exploiting legal loopholes, insider information, and financial sabotage. A sudden noise shattered the silence. The office door rattled violently. Leora spun around just in time to see a brick crash through the glass window, shards scattering across her desk. A note fluttered down, landing near her keyboard. "Back off, or next time won't miss." Her heart pounded as adrenaline surged through her veins. This was no longer just corporate warfare. It was personal. Within minutes, Dorian was at her side, his expression dark and fierce. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice low but urgent. "No," she replied, swallowing the tremor in her voice. "But someone wants to send a message." Dorian's protective instincts flared. "You're moving your office next to mine. No arguments." Leora opened her mouth to protest, but the steel in his eyes silenced her. This wasn't just about proximity. It was about safety. The next days blurred into a tense dance of strategy and vigilance. Security was tightened, schedules adjusted, and every move scrutinized. Yet amidst the chaos, something shifted between them. The contract that had once defined their relationship began to blur, replaced by a fragile trust and a growing reliance. Late one evening, as they pored over financial reports side by side, Dorian's hand brushed against Leora's. Neither pulled away. The moment was brief but charged, a silent acknowledgement that they were no longer just partners in business, but allies in a battle that threatened everything. Their shared determination forged a bond stronger than any contract. The board meeting arrived like a storm. The room was filled with skeptical eyes and whispered doubts. Shareholders demanded answers, the media circled like vultures, and Camden Royce's shadow loomed large. Dorian stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding silence. Beside him, Leora's steady gaze offered a quiet reassurance. He began, voice measured and resolute. "Vance Innovations faces unprecedented challenges, but we are united and prepared. Our strategy is clear, our leadership unwavering." Leora presented her findings, exposing the conspiracy with calm precision. The room shifted, skepticism giving way to cautious confidence. As the meeting closed, Dorian caught Leora's eye. In that glance was a promise of partnership, protection, and a future forged not just by contracts, but by trust. The battle was far from over, but together they were ready to fight. The sterile white walls of the medical clinic felt surreal to Leora as she sat across from the doctor, her hands resting lightly on her abdomen. The words echoed in her mind, both a shock and a beacon of hope. "You're pregnant." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The contract marriage, the corporate battles, the constant tension. Suddenly, there was a new life growing inside her, a fragile promise amid the chaos. When she told Dorian, his initial reaction was a mixture of surprise and disbelief. The man who had always been the embodiment of control now seemed momentarily unmoored. But that shock quickly gave way to something fierce and tender. His protective instincts surged, his usual stoic demeanor softening as he cradled her hands in his. "This changes everything," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "You and the baby. You're my priority now." The news added a new layer of urgency to their already precarious situation. Camden Royce, sensing vulnerability, escalated his attacks. The latest assault was a sophisticated cyber attack targeting Vance Innovations' servers, threatening to cripple the company's operations and expose sensitive data. Leora and Dorian found themselves locked in a high-stakes game of strategy. Late nights turned into early mornings as they combined her financial acumen with his leadership, crafting defenses and countermeasures. Their partnership deepened beyond the cold terms of their contract. In quiet moments between crises, they shared glimpses of genuine affection. A touch lingering a little longer, a shared smile in the midst of tension, a hand resting protectively on her growing belly. Yet, just as they began to find strength in each other, a new threat emerged. A major leak, confidential documents, personal emails, and company secrets surfaced online, threatening to unravel everything they had fought to protect. As the news spread, Dorian's jaw clenched, and Leora's heart raced. The battle was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. The glare of the spotlight was relentless. Headlines screamed about the contract marriage of Dorian Vance and Leora Quinn, painting their union as a calculated business move rather than a partnership of hearts. Tabloids speculated endlessly, dissecting every public appearance, every carefully crafted statement. Social media buzzed with opinions, some supportive, many skeptical, and others downright hostile. The company's troubles only fueled the fire. Share prices wavered, investors grew restless, and Camden Royce's aggressive tactics dominated the news cycle. Every misstep was magnified, every rumor amplified. Yet, behind closed doors, Dorian and Leora found solace in each other. The penthouse, with its sweeping views of the city, became their sanctuary, a place where the world's noise faded into the background. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the windows, Dorian reached for Leora's hand. "We're in this together," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. Leora squeezed his hand, her green eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. More than ever. Their bond had grown beyond the terms of their contract. They shared fears, hopes, and dreams, moments of vulnerability that neither had anticipated. Dorian's usual reserve softened in her presence, revealing a man capable of tenderness and trust. Leora, in turn, found strength in his unwavering support, but the battle was far from over. Leora's relentless investigation into Camden's maneuvers uncovered a damning truth. Hidden beneath layers of corporate deception were links to illegal activities, money laundering, insider trading, and covert funding of hostile takeovers. The evidence was irrefutable. She presented her findings to Dorian late one night, the weight of the revelation heavy in the air. "This isn't just business rivalry," she said. "It's criminal." Dorian's expression darkened. "We need help, someone who can take this beyond the boardroom." The hint of FBI involvement was no longer speculation. Trusted contacts within law enforcement had begun quietly gathering intelligence, preparing to move against Camden and his network. As the danger closed in, Dorian and Leora steeled themselves for a decisive confrontation. Strategies were refined, security tightened, and alliances forged. Then, in the dead of night, the unthinkable happened. The penthouse security alarms blared, shattering the silence. Red lights flashed as the building's emergency protocols activated. Dorian grabbed a handgun from a hidden safe, his protective instincts fully ignited. Leora moved beside him, heart pounding but resolute. Together, they faced the breach, a coordinated attack aimed at destroying everything they held dear. The battle for their future had truly begun. The night air was thick with tension as Dorian Vance and Leora Quinn prepared for the confrontation that would decide the fate of Vance Innovations. The penthouse, once a sanctuary, had become a fortress. Every door secured, every window reinforced, security personnel on high alert. Camden Royce's assault was relentless. His operatives had infiltrated the company's servers, launched legal attacks, and now they had come for the heart of Dorian's empire. His home, his family, his legacy. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the penthouse as masked figures rappelled down the walls, weapons drawn. Dorian moved with practiced precision, positioning himself between Leora and the intruders. His voice was calm but commanding. "Stay behind me." Leora's mind raced, analyzing the attacker's movements, searching for weaknesses. Her quick thinking allowed her to disable a security panel, triggering lockdown protocols that sealed off escape routes and trapped the assailants inside. Amid the chaos, Dorian's leadership shone. Coordinating with security teams via encrypted channels, he directed countermeasures that neutralized the threat. The battle was fierce, but brief, a testament to their preparation and resolve. When the dust settled, law enforcement arrived, arresting Camden and his operatives. The FBI's presence confirmed the gravity of the situation, their investigation uncovering a web of criminal activity that extended far beyond corporate rivalry. In the aftermath, Maricela Drake's true motives came to light. Her alliance with Camden had been driven not just by ambition, but desperation. A desire to reclaim power and status lost through failed ventures and personal vendettas. Dorian and Leora stood together, their hands intertwined, the contract that had bound them now transformed into something far deeper. Their marriage was no longer a mere business arrangement, but a genuine partnership forged in fire and trust. Later, in the quiet of the penthouse, they reflected on their journey. The battles fought, the wounds healed, and the love that had blossomed against all odds. Dorian looked at Leora, his eyes soft with gratitude. "We survived because we chose each other." Leora smiled, her heart full. "And we'll keep choosing each other. Every day." The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of the penthouse nursery, casting a gentle glow over the carefully prepared room. A crib stood ready, adorned with delicate blankets and plush toys, a symbol of hope and renewal for Leora and Dorian. The months since the battle had been a whirlwind of preparation and quiet anticipation. Leora's pregnancy had brought a new rhythm to their lives, one filled with doctor's appointments, whispered dreams, and the steady support of family and friends. Celine Vance was a constant presence, her fiery spirit tempered by a newfound tenderness as she helped prepare for the arrival of her nephew or niece. The activist sister, who had once challenged corporate power, now embraced the promise of family with open arms. Trusted allies from the company and security teams gathered for a small celebration, their camaraderie a testament to the bonds forged through adversity. Leora and Dorian stood side by side, their hands intertwined, faces glowing with the quiet joy of new beginnings. The public announcement of their strengthened leadership was met with optimism. Investors responded positively, the company's future secure under their united vision. The media, once skeptical, now spoke of a powerful partnership built on trust and resilience. In the quiet moments away from the spotlight, Leora and Dorian reflected on their journey. From a contract marriage born of necessity to a partnership chosen freely and fiercely. "Love isn't a transaction," Dorian said softly one evening, his hand resting protectively on Leora's belly. "It's a choice we make every day." She smiled, her heart full. "And I choose you, not because of contracts or conditions, but because of who you are." Their kiss was tender and sure, a promise beyond business, beyond obligation. Yet, as they embraced, a subtle tension lingered, a reminder that the world they navigated was ever-changing, and new challenges awaited on the horizon. But for now, in this moment of peace, They were ready to face whatever came next. Together. A year had passed since the storm that nearly tore Vance Innovations apart. The penthouse, once a battleground, now echoed with laughter and the soft patter of tiny feet. Dorian and Leora's life had transformed in ways neither could have imagined. From a contract marriage forged in necessity to a family bound by love and resilience. The twins, Aiden and Ethan, were the center of their world. Today was a milestone, their first steps. Leora watched with tears of joy as Aiden wobbled uncertainly toward her, arms outstretched, followed closely by his brother. Dorian caught them both, his face alight with pride and wonder. "Look at them," he whispered, pulling Leora close. "Our greatest achievement." Their journey had been anything but easy. The battles fought in boardrooms and behind closed doors had tested their strength, but the love they had chosen to nurture had become their true legacy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in hues of gold, Dorian took Leora's hand. They stood on the balcony, the skyline a glittering backdrop to a moment of quiet intimacy. "I want to renew our vows," he said softly, eyes searching hers. "Not as a contract, but as a promise. To you, to our family, to the life we're building together." Leora smiled, her heart swelling. "Yes, no contracts, just us." Their kiss sealed the promise, a testament to the power of love, trust, and the courage to choose family above all else. As they embraced, the future stretched before them, uncertain, challenging, but filled with hope. Thank you for joining us on this journey. What do you think about contract marriages? Could love truly grow from such beginnings? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories that explore the complexities of love, power, and resilience.